pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Bob, will you do the honors?
Yep. I get caught up here. Chair doesn't slide very well for the old man. Anyway, bow our heads. Father, we thank you again for this day, for our sunshine that keeps us bright. People of Civil Air Patrol give them guidance in regards to their mission, safety of travels, safety of flight. And for those who donate all their time, Father, just watch over them. And we pray for those who are ill. Pray for our United States, for our government, for the right decisions. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, well, no one has given me any good updates. So, to my knowledge, our new to us airplane is still down. Has anyone heard anything different? So, we flew it for MS, MO, AP training. So, flew all day. Came here last week for Nighthawk, and it was gone because our commander was flying the plane, and now it's broken. So that's not the first time that's happened. But
I'm beginning to wonder just what kind of maintenance is being performed, because
or what kind of
a good
flying is being
airplane.
done.
We've had success with 5-3 Echo. We'd fly it for months before we did any work on it.
Yeah,
And it seems like every month one of the planes that we have for Squadron 5 is in some hangar being repaired, and that's just unsatisfactory in my respect.
yeah, I mean, it's all through maintenance one, right? Like, we don't really, that's the local depot, right? You saying we should.
The only reason why they went that way is because some mechanics didn't have $1 million insurance policy, and that's what they required. And they thought they were going to save money by having one centralized system. But you know, our mechanic that we had in Redlands, you can call at 7 o'clock at night and say that this is wrong. 8 o'clock in the morning, it's ready to fly. And took it away from him. He was a good mechanic. We had him for many, many years. But
Yeah.
I'm just kind of cautious about what we have here at Riverside. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's no bueno. I mean, I'm still in my trying to get my first annual started, so I don't know, nerve-wracking, but I mean, you know, I watch these guys maintenance planes out here, and yeah, they work through the night to get them back up and running because they're revenue earners, so I guess that's the difference, right? So I don't know. It's sad. It's sad to see that, you know, we just get a plane and it's gone already, or it's
You
down.
said Andre was flying it?
No, so our wing commander,
Oh.
they were flying the MQ mission,
Oh, okay.
so came back.
So I've flown. I've actually flown that mission.
Mhm.
Not here, but with Chalk 2, and they're following Reapers.
That's what I hear. I
Those
don't know
Reapers
the
are.
details.
I mean, I was in a 210, and
Yeah, they're fast.
there was times I'd tell them to slow down.
Well, they're
I couldn't keep up.
turboprops, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
160 knots.
and they can burn you climbing. They can burn you descending. They can burn you any way, which
Yeah.
way.
Yeah,
We do all kinds of like crazy, like turns to just to
S-turns.
slow down,
Yeah,
to because they're flying so slow when we're descending. And yeah, I'm not sure if we know what their, flight characteristics are like when they're flying
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't.
flight habits.
I mean, the only thing I could imagine is we're technically escorting them through normal airspace. Is that my understanding of
Just
it?
through the NAS, yeah, typically from like Class Charlie over March or Edwards to the MOA, right? That's north of
Yeah.
Apple Valley.
That's my understanding. I was like, okay. I mean, it sounds like it'd be fun, but I couldn't quite wrap my head around. I mean, a Turbo 206 is not the fastest aircraft out there, but
Do they
I guess it's fast enough.
did they say what the squawk was?
Is this 216 Charlie Papa?
Yeah.
It's cleared.
Oh, has it been cleared?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
Fixed by Sorby and
See, I don't have access to AMRAD, so.
forward that to you again.
I don't either.
HSI.
I looked at it and I couldn't get to that one. Plus, it's in Arizona, so it's not on the PRNA.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there was an issue with the HSI, but they cleared it, they fixed it. It's
So
15 degrees off.
So the original issue was.
No, there was an oil leak.
leak, yeah.
There's that too.
Oh, okay.
Because remember when we were starting the little gathering out there in the hangar, I noticed all of the oil in the center, and I started wiping it up.
Mm-hmm.
But that was in between those missions, so
Yeah.
I sure hope our illustrious ex-leader was checking the oil. But there was a lot of oil on the.
And the way it's gonna come is from the oil drain not being seated. They have a lot of oil dripping out.
Hmm.
Because all the oil that sits in the cylinder heads is gonna drain back into the main body,
So the sump,
which
yeah.
is the crankcase.
Mhm.
And if you got a lot of oil, the only thing that's gonna produce a lot of oil in the ground would be the oil drain valve. Not
Yeah,
being,
like
not
it's
being,
not, it's
still-
not fully
still
closed.
not
grounded.
being seated. And it's a push-pull, sometimes it's something else.
Yeah.
Mine has never leaked, and it's the original that's been with that
Yeah,
engine.
my oil, the drain does, I mean, it closes nice and securely. I mean, I've never had a problem with that.
So yes, it's still grounded.
Yeah, okay,
It's
are you
in-
looking at PRMA?
I am looking at the work order,
Oh, okay.
100-hour annual inspection, excessive oil leak. So not mission ready right now.
Yeah. So,
So that's basically an annual inspection. Everything's gotta come out of it. You open the floorboards, you open everything. 100 hours.
the 100-hour, yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully we'll get to fly it again soon. I mean, it's the curse of the
Anything
Turbo
like that
206.
will be gonna happen.
Let's see. Like I said, I didn't get, so normally I get a kind of an update of stuff announced, but there really isn't much.
Is that the one that Terry's supposed to take tomorrow? Or was supposed to?
No one's told me anything. No one has told me anything. Let's see. If anyone is looking to complete their ICS 300, so that means you already have 100, 200, 7, and 800 done, and now you're looking for doing base staff during any of the SARXs or an actual mission, you're going to need ICS 300 eventually. They don't do it very often, so if you're already ready during the training and you want to take it, they're offering it virtually the 17th through the 19th of May. It's a long couple of days, but definitely worth it. I mean, I've done my 300. I'm not going to do 400 for a while. It's 2 days of basically planning for a disaster and then executing on a disaster virtually. So if you're at that stage, I advise you to get into that course. And if you don't have the email, I can forward it to you. Questions about the ICS 300?
So I have a bit of a dilemma. So I'm scheduled for that class, that ICS 300, but they also have offered me to do Waldo training down at the San Diego Cervix. How would you prioritize it?
Yeah, I would take the Waldo training. It's rare.
That's my take.
Well, it's rarer. That's the other problem.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, opportunities around here, you go with the rarity. So ICS, they do offer it a few times a year. It's just it doesn't happen as often. Waldo, this is the first time I've even heard of the training being available. So
Yeah, I was amazed that, because I just sent my thing in hoping that they would, say yes, and there's only like 5 slots or something. So.
wow. See, I must have missed it, or I wasn't paying attention. Either way. So yeah, as you know, Andre's not here. He's traveling for business. Let's see. I'm scanning to see if there's anything I missed. You all know about, who here doesn't know about PRMA? Yeah, I mean, it's a continual reminder. It looks like, let me raise this up a little bit. I hate when I hit the wrong button. Yeah, I know, I'm kind of tired of saying it at this point. So Whammo cycle duty cycle is over. Who knows what Whammo is? Who's heard of it? Wow. Okay.
I actually got a call on this last.
Did
cycle.
you?
Yes.
Well, tell what was it?
It was a beacon going off.
Bah, ELT?
Van Nuys Air Force.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, that
Not
call.
too exciting, but it was great to get the phone call.
Oh, wait a minute. Let's see. Let me see. Was that it? No, that's wise. Okay, I'll take a look at that because I mean, I've done it many times and have not gotten called out.
I
So.
think that was my second or third time, and I'd never gotten a call.
I always get a call when I drive home. I have to pull over, write down all the stuff, and then make all the phone calls.
Yeah. So let's see. Who doesn't know what WAMO is?
Monitoring emergency.
Wing Mission Alert Officer, right? So the way it works, so the way SAR kind of gets activated is usually through an ELT pickup, but we could have other things that go on. But let's say it's an ELT that hard landing, pilot's not aware of it, they put the plane away, it's chirping away at night. Eventually, that signal will get picked up by satellite or heard. I mean, somebody could be tuning 1215 and hear it, but that'll go up the chain into AFRCC, the Air Force Rescue Coordination Center. They will when they prioritize it, it'll eventually get into the activating CAP. If it's in this region, it gets down to our wing and then our group, which then will cause a call out, right? And the call out is pretty straightforward. There's a phone system that the number routes into a system that is in PRMA, the app that's not an app. And WAMO duty, what you're signing up for is being the person who receives that call from the Air Force Rescue Coordination Center. Sounds, it is very important, but it is not difficult to do. The training is completely quick. It's all, watch a couple of videos, be willing to answer the phone, and write down a bunch of information. And then the system will have a call IC button. That's literally how it works, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you call IC button.
And it worked.
And it goes and it finds the on-call ICs, incident commanders, because an incident commander is the one who starts an incident. Like when there's an incident occurring, they're the one who's the first one that's assigned to the incident, and then they can bring in other staff as needed to close that incident. So as a WAMO, you get the call, you take down all the information, then you hit the call IC button, and the IC that hopefully picks up the phone. You relay that information, and they accept the mission or decline the mission, which they'll have to hit find another IC. But it's all fairly automated, but we have a human in the process to take the information and do an actual physical handoff, or virtual, if you will, to an IC. And at that point, your WAMO duty is done for that incident. Very simple. I know a couple of years ago we had a hard time staffing it, just coming out of COVID and stuff like that. It's gotten a lot better now. We've tried to advertise it quite a bit more. And I'm one of the assistant group WAMOs, so I should talk about it more, which I haven't been doing. But it's not a difficult task. It is, but it's a critical task to CAP because it is how we get assigned. Because it could be an ELT, it could be lost hikers, lost people, whatever it is. If they're creating an incident that CAP needs to actually get involved with, it needs to have an IC assigned, and the WAMO is the link between the AFRCC and an IC. So, and if all those acronyms are kind of stew in your head right now, it's because you need to take the IS 100, 200, 700, and 800. Then you will understand what all that wonderful acronym soup means. But it's basically the incident commander, as I've explained. There are other positions inside of there that you will become very familiar with as you take the courses. And it's actually very interesting. I mean, this is ES Day, so we can talk a little bit about it. But it was born out of the way the firefighters handle incidents, because they're dealing with a lot of things that, a firefighter in the police department, they work together. The hospitals, they work together. But they're all different chain of commands, and they all have different duties. So how do you get them all to work together on an incident? And that's what the incident command system was designed to deal with, is knowing what, knowing your role and the terminology that goes behind it. So even though you might be a first lieutenant, deputy commander of a squadron for Civil Patrol, or a mission observer, none of those really make a difference when I'm in the incident command system, because I will be a member of a strike team probably, and that strike team might be an aircraft that needs to be tasked to take photographic evidence over an area, and that means I'm a member of that strike team, and that's how going on over there?
It
Uh,
flipped around.
Oh, I can solve this problem. Yeah, that's, I mean, the instant command system, I know it sounds like, oh, yeah, yet another thing to go online and learn about, and, it's going to be awful. It's actually very interesting information, especially the first time you run through it, probably not the second or third time. And like I said, the ICS 300, the difference between that training is 100, 200, 700, and 800 is all online. You read a bunch of information, you take a test, and you score over 70%, like most government tests. The 300 and the 400 are in person or virtually in person, and it is hands-on. It is we're going to make sure that we understand all the things we have learned previously about the incident command system. We're going to plan for an incident, like mine was a flood, which was interesting, and we plan and then we execute. And so there's rain coming. Epic floods. What are we doing to prepare for this? Day 2 was the flood has happened, and here's what's occurring. And you, as different members of the incident command staff, we do different things to help with that. So that's
Exactly what happened this week with the floods.
there was flooding. No, I'm always joking about that. But actually, that's true. So it did rain. I got a little bit of rain, but where did it flood? Oh, yeah. I mean, there's. Well, it's Texas. I mean, what was it? Somebody said happier than a tornado in a Texas trailer park. It's like I've lived in Texas, and that is a true statement. They do that. Let's see. Now let's see. We went over this last weekend. We went over a lot of MS stuff. Now, let's see. I'm scanning the room. So most of us were pilots. So those of you who attended the training, I guess let's start there. Comments, feedback. I mean, because I was one of the trainers, so I have my section of things that I know that I want to do better next time. But what were your thoughts on how it went?
I thought it was good. I mean, we made a lot of progress that day, so both days. Only thing is, found ourselves on day 2, getting ready to go up, and we're still scrambling to figure out paperwork that we needed. We could have had better direction on exactly what paperwork is expected of us at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Because the second time we have to perform, and if we didn't get it right the first time, now we got to do it right the second time.
Yeah.
So that would be only feedback.
So yeah, I mean it. And again,
For example, a scanner form. Terry sent an email saying, "This is the form that I use." So is that the form that we need, or the forms online?
Well, and then also those ones I handed out.
So what's the expectation?
So yeah, and that's one of those things. Like I need to sync up with whoever the pilot is going to be flying, because I learned a few things, and one of it is addressing that, which is it is a little chaotic. So from that standpoint, you got this RX experience, right? I mean, so that was one thing I prepped, Chuck for. Here's what happens at a SRX. It's like total mayhem, and you've got to kind of make sure people understand what you need and really get it done. And the problem with a SRX is exactly the problem that we experienced on that weekend. Is there are 3 different tracks that we're trying to accomplish at the same time, and it's super chaos, right? So the one thing we learned is we at least need to break those up, right? So MS and MO are not the same, even though they do have overriding tasks, but we need to spend a lot more time on scanner first. But then we also said pilot versus non-pilot, because pilots, we can get through a scanner training fairly quickly because they've already done it, and every rated pilot that has those capabilities. MO is a bit different because you're not flying the aircraft, you are running the mission. So it's one of those things where we probably should separate those out and have a non-pilot MS and a regular MS, where we do take 2 days to go over basically an abbreviated PPL ground school, which is basically what it is without the flying components, right? And then MO is that needs to be more practical, because most of the stuff that we're going to do is going to be in the plane or has to be on the actual equipment. And you know, I noticed a few people that were here for MO, self-elected, that are like, I'm not ready to do, you know, to do it because I haven't touched the G1000 ever, or I haven't touched it in months or weeks, or you know. So so I think I definitely, that was some of the learning. And in that case, that I didn't have any time to meet up with, you know, Terry or Andre to say, well, here's what I think I should, you know, we should provide the task guide, which is, that's what I was doing, those little kneeboard versions of, here are the tasks you need to do, let's check them off, and then, you know, next person, and get that done super quick, you know, so we can churn through it faster. So that's and then if Terry's got a sheet, I don't know which one he's using, so yeah, it turns into a bit of a, you know, who's
So I found in the plane I was using two different forms. I'm filling out my log over here, and then
Yeah.
the second one, the second sheet. So yeah, I was going
Yeah.
back and forth. I figured out, okay, I'll combine these when I get down back on the ground.
And I'm not sure if he was trying to get you to keep a log, which might be different than the task guide, right? Because there are actually, like, what I printed off was, here's the stuff that you actually need to sign off for, right, in Squitter. And he's probably talking about, well, you need to keep a log, you need to keep a position log and a comm log and all this other stuff, which is true. We need to keep all of those things. So, yeah, a little chaotic. But how did the flying parts go? Because obviously I didn't go with you guys. So, yeah, I mean, the
That's
flying.
the fun part.
Right?
Did you have to do backseat? Was this
Yeah,
the first time?
I was
Yeah.
backseat.
Yeah. It was pretty calm, or was it choppy?
Slightly bumpy, but not bad.
I mean, if you
afternoon,
fly in SoCal, it's
That's the Terry form that he's,
Oh.
it's basically a cheat sheet so that you can later fill
oh
out
yeah,
the
yeah,
104.
yeah. This is the right.
Yeah.
So this isn't, yeah. So remember, what I was having was those little task guides, right? This is like what he suggests you carry,
Yeah,
because if you're doing an actual
one.
search,
okay.
like this is kind of helpful to keep you organized during a search.
So I was keeping this plus
Yeah.
his log.
Okay,
Yeah, so
that makes sense.
yeah, that one, I mean, in all honesty, in the stuff that I've done, that one is the best. And then you take all that
Mhm.
information, you have to sit down at the computer to fill out, you know, all
Yeah.
of the debrief, all of, you know, all that mission stuff in Wimmers.
Because see, what I had
But
done,
this is by far the most handy.
I created all these little. So when you're training, this is basically, it's hard to see, obviously. It's hard to see, obviously, but it is the it's. I basically took the task guide for every squitter. There's a task guide that you have to complete, and it's basically just this task guide that, oh, let me keep track of all the things I need to actually do to get signed off for my squitter. So that's what this is. And you know, I mean, it does get confusing because yeah, you're juggling that piece of paper, you're figuring out what's task you have to check off, which is why it's like I'd rather do, especially for pilots that are having to go through MS, I'd rather do more flying for them to just get these tasks checked off, so they can kind of quickly get through the MS program. And then for non-pilots, we spend more time on, well, here's a bunch of information you need to know, right? And
Well,
that's
you know, I just felt that at some point on the second day, everybody had different paperwork.
yeah,
They were scrambling, trying to get different paperwork, and different tables had different stuff, wondering do we have what we need?
yeah, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and it's tough for us too. I mean, because you know we have to sign off on it, and then did you get it done, and did the pilot see you do it, and yeah, it turns into a bit of a mess. Where, I mean, it would be nice if, you know, well, anyways.
Was it the 104 that you had as well?
I didn't even bring it with me. I'll pull it.
Yeah, there's a number of, I mean, and they're all good. I mean, I think I have PDF copies of them, and they're downloaded to my ForeFlight, so I can pull them up and annotate them in ForeFlight. Have I actually used them? No, I usually end up with a blank scratch pad and just writing the information that I need to know. But however you organize, I think the key is, yeah, I think the key is you need to make sure that you have something with you to keep yourself organized in flight. Because again, this is one of those things that pilots know. They need to, you know, there's information we need to write down. It needs to be pretty quick. If you're not a pilot, you have more time really to organize yourself and, use a larger sheet of paper and a clipboard and really get into it. Whereas I think one of the skills I had to learn during my training was, writing stuff with my right hand, flying with the left hand, and then having to stop writing to make a power adjustment. And so, anyways, it's good stuff. Anyone else? Let's see. You guys, how'd you? Or Mike at least. How did you go? How did you feel about the training at the end?
I thought it was
the end of the
great
day?
because I had, number one, so many things to cover, so many things to learn, and I was primarily interested in seeing the entire process. What is the process, the expectations, learning how to do it properly. Like I stated in the first meeting, I completely zero myself out, knowing nothing at all, being completely agnostic so I can train the proper way and go through the entire process, see what's expected, and then make mental notes through that process of what I could improve on. As I get through, because time is of the essence, we're on the move, we're doing things, and making mental notes to myself that, hey, I need to revisit this and actually do some serious work on this to get up to operational efficiency, and kind of go from there. But I was delighted with it. There was a lot that took place. There was a lot of information. The papers, like Al was talking about, yes, I was a little bit confused because there were multiple forms to use. But as far as the flight, getting out and spotting the targets, perfect. And once again, I made notes of, as far as the hops time, wheels up, moving in a target area, great. Moving out of target area, great, as far as logging those things. But there again, as far as coordinates and cap overlay, I could see some areas that really need a lot of attention to revisit before that next flight that we're going to go on for our.
The grids, they're helpful because without the cap grid, how do they tell you what area to search, right? And that's the big, that's my big takeaway. Like, knowing how to calculate the grid, that's ancillary. It's like, yes, it's 1 degree this way and 1 degree that way, and that's fine. But when I hear it's LAX 226 alpha, or 226 alpha Bravo, right? You can immediately kind of figure out when I look at the sectional with a cap overlay. I don't have to go over now you can use GPS coordinates too, but the cap grid is pretty good at getting you into an area and then defining your search parameters. And then when you start using things like ForeFlight or what was the other one that guy kept bringing up, WingX or whatever, once you start overlaying it, what will happen is, like in ForeFlight, for example, if you're sitting in the back seat, you don't have access to the MFD in the front, so you're not going to really be doing any of the flight planning. But if you want to keep track of what's going on, you can do SAR, and you can program what would be the course we're going to fly on a search grid. And, it targets for usually the lower left-hand corner of the grid, and then you have to know the length of our legs and, the turn, and then calculate for wind. But these are all things that you can actually do in ForeFlight, and then ForeFlight will actually spit out the exact course we're going to fly. Like, it's actually pretty cool. It's actually a little better than what the G1000 can do, because the G1000, the MO has to program that all in by hand. So, and we don't get that often of a chance to actually do it. So it's one of those things where I would probably just cheat and do it in ForeFlight, and then if there's a connects module, I'll upload it, and if not, I'll just kind of do the one-to-one translate. But the times that I've flown with any mission pilot that doesn't know how to fly grid by hand is that. It's like they all have great stick and rudder skills. They know how to fly grid. You, as the mission commander, if you will, should understand the different type of search patterns. And as a scanner, you're not going to know that yet. And I guess, a little side note, calling it mission scanner is interesting. I'd rather just call it mission aircrew, because you're really aircrew, and you should be able to fill a bunch of different roles. Eyeballs outside the aircraft is the point, but the reason we want to break it up into pilot versus non-pilot initially for MS is because pilots are already around planes, right? We've all had to go to ground school, and we've all had to prove that we know how to not get ourselves killed around an aircraft, which is being part of an air crew. and I think the military does a lot of this too, there are responsibilities that you have around aircraft and things that you're doing so to keep yourself safe, keep the aircraft safe, even though you're not the pilot. And I think it's important that we focus more on the safety aspects, what you can do to be helpful, what you can do to, help in an emergency situation. I think those are all far more important than, search parameters at this point, but it is the training that we have. I'd rather people be safe and understand what's good, what's bad. When we say there's FOD, what does that mean? I mean, we didn't even talk about that, right? But FOD, for an object or debris around the aircraft, causes damage, can cause critical errors in the plane at inopportune times. FOD's important, right? And every aircrew should be aware of FOD, and hangar rash, and But anyways, I think I'm interjecting a little bit of my, when people fly with me personally, I know they're not pilots, so I have to kind of be, on guard for what's going on, and I kind of herd people into a certain part of my aircraft, so because I have to be the first one in, which means I don't get the last look, right? And that's one of those things where, how you manage that, that's the difference between having passengers and having aircrew. And I don't want people trained by our squadron to be passengers. I want them to be aircrew. and I think that, and I mean, some of the long timers, which, I'm looking at Cappy. The training quality of our air crews has kind of been up and down over the years, right? And when I first started and got my MS, I flew, like I said, I flew with a not that great MO, which wasn't my problem. It was the pilot's problem because he had to do all the MO's tasks. And then from the back seat, I was like, well, just hit that button and then turn that over there, and just hit that. And so the pilot's like, yeah, I like this guy. Right, and I want people trained by us to be that guy, the one who's helpful no matter where they're sitting in the aircraft, and not be the untrained MO, that's like, what, and the pilot now has to do all this stuff.
Yeah, that was another thing when Andre was glancing at his screen. I mean, my situational awareness, because it allowed me to, when I saw him look at the screen, I immediately started scanning for air traffic. I mean, that's obvious. As far as being proactive and looking for those things,
Mm-hmm.
I tried to do as best I possibly could to kind of do things that are implied that I should be doing like that.
And it's important because I mean, we're task loaded as pilots and as crew, learning how to scan correctly for visual scan, airborne visual scan as opposed to the ground scan. It's a thing. Like, I mean, whenever I'm flying right seat, whether personally or with CAP, I see a lot more air traffic than the pilots do, right? And it's just, why is that? Well, because the pilot's task loaded of doing other things, and to truly scan airspace, you have to do 1 degree or 10 seconds, 1 degree, or not 1, but 10 degree, 10 degree, and then kind of like, okay, and then move, and then move, and then move. Like, you have to manually do that, and then at night, it's completely different. So if I'm going to scan in your direction, I look this way, and I scan off, right? And I look, and I look, and I look, but you don't stare at any light. It's like, anyways, those things you only learn if you fly. And we could talk about it all day in the training, and it's going to be great, but until you get in a plane and fly around and get used to scanning your part of the aircraft and knowing what's critical phases of flight and knowing not to step on people on the radio. I mean, those are all things you have to just learn. You hear the click, mid-sentence, or you start passively listening for the aircraft's call sign or tail number. Only thing you do is fly. And, I mean, we're all here, well, a lot of us are here to fly, so I just want to churn out, good CAP air crews. Like, that's kind of what I'm looking at. But,
So I guess my next question is, what's the next step? When is the next opportunity?
well, yeah, I mean, we haven't talked about it, but, I think I'm still recovering. But I think, yeah, I need to sync up with Andre, because, like, I've never launched an event yet, so that's kind of one thing. But yeah, I think we need to, legit put together a kind of a more formalized and maybe decide on some sort of cadence that we're going to do it. Like, are we going to do it quarterly? You know, are we going to do it monthly? Or, you know, monthly is probably too much. But, you know, what are we going to break those into? Which, you know, I think we kind of know. And then how often are we going to do those training courses? Because, you know, it's time, resources, it's volunteer organization. In most events, especially if they're going to be open to cadets, we have to plan. There's a certain amount of time we have to give for parents' approval and slips and stuff like that. So, because cadets can do MS, right? And I'd want cadets to be, you know, my first experience at CAP, I wasn't a cadet, but I was a 24-year-old, you know, senior member. In the first SARX that I showed up to, it was a pretty cool event. Like, it's why I'm back in CAP today, because it still stuck with me after all these years. I was at work. I get a call that they needed, because I was ground team back then, because this was in Ohio, and I was cadet officer and ground team. And so I get a call at work like, hey, we need some ground team people, but no one's available. Can you come? And I talk to my boss, and they're like, yeah, volunteer work, go. And so the call I get from CAP was, now this is back member-owned aircraft. Like, you know, there was no CAP. Well, there might have been CAP-owned aircraft, but they weren't common. And they said, yeah, meet at Cuyahoga County Airport, again, Ohio, at, you know, this time, and, you know, have a uniform, have your 24-hour pack. You know, so in ground team, they usually will have a 24, 48, 72-hour loadout, depending on how long you expect to be out in the field. And I was first responder qualified back then, which meant that I had to bring oxygen. So it was, I pack out super heavy even for 24 hours. So I go home, get my stuff, drive to the airport, and I'm just sitting there. You know, and back then, you know, I wasn't a pilot, it was a twinkle in my eye. I didn't even think about what I was going to be doing. I had flown a Cessna, but a long time ago. So I was like, all right. And I see this Cessna 310, so a twin, Cessna 310 comes in, taxis out, guy hops out of the plane. Are you Lieutenant Younger? Yeah, that's me. Yeah, I'm your ride. I'm like, all right. We hop in this plane, and we flew, you know, 3 hours to, well, not 3 hours, I think it was like 2 hours to mid-Ohio. And my job was to stage an aircraft crash. So we had the parts that looked like, you know, broken up aircraft. We had a dummy that was a dead body, and then I was supposed to be injured. And and then I sat down there with a radio. Like, I had a CAP vehicle, drove out with all this stuff in the back, staged the scene, radioed my coordinates back to the incident commander, and they started the search. And I'm just sitting there, and so I staged the aircraft crash and then the dead body inside the aircraft. Really, really nice. And then I, limped away to try to find a clearing to signal, right? That was what I had staged, and did all that. And then I had my radios, and I'm listening to the search. Like, it's pretty cool. So I'm watching, planes do the grid, and I see, and back then they were much bigger, and I think Terry can speak to a lot of this. They were much bigger on the aircraft visual communications with the ground teams. So they had radios, but they practiced visual communications. So I remember watching the plane fly over, and then immediately turn around and then circle, and then he goes off to where the ground team is and circles them, and then flies back and circles me. So that's the air crew communicating that there is something of interest I want you to see. And wagging the rings, and up and down, and all the different ways that they can communicate in the aircraft to people on the ground. And that was like the coolest thing. Like, it was really cool. Whole day of just watching an actual search take place. And we do that in SARXs here, but the ones that I've done, I haven't seen that much interaction. It's been very disjointed. The ground teams and their comms have been sketchy. And I think it's just because everybody's being trained, and so that said, being trained in air crew is one thing. Knowing how to execute a search is another, but I often wonder how much time should we dedicate to learning how to do a search properly, which is our primary function, but we don't do a lot of it, as opposed to the discrete skills of, being an MS, being a good aircrew member, and being able to help with the aircraft prep that the pilot trusts. Notice I said that part, because Terry doesn't trust anybody. He just doesn't. And and then having an MO that pilots rely on, right, to do the parts that MOs are supposed to do, which is, a flight plan, keeping track of the search, keeping track of any other crew we have on board, and doing the Wimmer's work, right? So all that's very critical to making mission success, because pilots, as you can tell, after a day of flying, like, they're wiped out, right? So what was hard for me is I was kind of doing half of like AOBD duty that day, because I'm doing all the sortie information, and you can see it's work. Like, it's not just like, oh yeah, click and we're done. It's like, no, I have to gather all this information, make sure it's correct, and that's what an MO would do, is after every single one of those sorties, confirm that information and close out and debrief the sortie. So, but yeah, we haven't planned it. I've got ideas, but I think we need to just kind of plan as a command staff, figure out our cadence on that. Because again, I mean, I'm trying to avoid going so far as saying I want to make it my personal mission to turn out better air crews, but I mean, I guess that's kind of what I'm saying. So.
One thing that we just put on Teams is aircrew opportunities under Squadron 5. So if you need something, post it there.
Oh, okay.
And it hasn't gotten a lot of discussion yet, but hopefully, if Terry's flying somewhere and he doesn't need, he's got an open seat or whatever, and you need a scanner mission or whatever, if you post it there, hopefully he'll look at it and, hey, do you want to go on a scanner hop tomorrow or whatever?
Is this the training events one, or?
I don't see it.
No, it's under Squadron 5. It's under us. It says aircrew opportunities.
Oh, is it? Maybe I don't. Oh, there it is. It's hidden.
Okay, yeah.
Why is it hidden?
It was hidden.
Why is it hidden? Oh, it's unhidden now. So, hey, I have a section. I've never used it.
But anyway, we're trying to get everybody, pilots and potential crew members, to post their stuff there. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, I didn't even know about that. I didn't know he had set that up.
It
That's
hasn't.
really good.
We haven't really publicized it yet, but
Okay. Well, that's I like
But
you.
you were using it.
I like you. What's that?
I said, but you were using it.
Oh, of course he is.
I put it in. So. I got permission from Andre to put it up there. Because it's frustrating. You're waiting to get a mission, and you don't know who's flying where. You can't, you have no visibility. So it seemed like a good way to.
No, I like it. Like I said, I add it to mine because usually it's like, and I mean, it's slightly a failure of CAP that there's no user-friendly way for pilots to seek out MOs, right? So, I mean, there's a way during a mission that they can do these things, right? There's when a mission lights off, those of us who are MOs, are MSs, we get an automated, notification that there's a mission. Are you available, right? And then it's kind of like a lottery system, but a lottery, but not a lottery. I mean, the ICs and pilots, they know who we are, but they've flown with us before, right? And that's who they typically always choose, is people they've flown with before. And while that's, it is flattering and it's great, but there should be a better way that when they're not doing something that's super critical, like we're not looking for a lost hiker, right? This is probably an ELT search in a hangar. That's a great time to take somebody who is either in the final phases of learning or is newly qualified in that position and having a real mission to execute on, right? And it would be great if there was a way for pilots to kind of seek crew of certain type of requirements, like, hey, have they been an MO for longer than a year? Okay, that's because for a real mission, maybe I want that. But for any training mission, I want all MOs that are less than a year or less than 6 months or whatever. And I'm sure certain pilots would be fine with that, because now, as opposed to getting one by surprise, which is how they normally get them, like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, great. As opposed to, okay, I know I'm getting somebody who needs a little extra training, or this is their first real mission, and they can be supportive as opposed to just cranky, right? And if I was a programmer, I would try to write that module, but I'm not. But yeah, I mean, there's always some ideas. I mean, everybody has great ideas, but the software is all written by, volunteer. So good luck. Maybe I'll you know what? I don't know. I'll think about that. I think I just walked myself into a good idea. I mean probably something more like PRMA would be better, but I don't even know who develops that. But yeah, I mean something similar to this. I mean we're going to use Teams, but something similar where pilots could be like, hey, I've got an open MO seat or an open scanner seat because we have a plane that has more carry capability. Who wants to fly? Yeah.
Even if it's just a reload or something, at least you can go get time on the MFD.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is if they're not time crunched, because the problem is it's the time crunch that happens too. Is no matter everybody's good intentions, it's like, well, I don't want to take 30 minutes to put a flight plan into the G1000, right? I mean, and that's a real situation. Like, I try to be proficient enough so that we start up the plane and I can start doing that type of stuff very quickly. And all MOs should, but how do they get to that level of proficiency if you're not flying with a G1000 every day, right? And that's,
You get on the Redbird.
you can get on the Redbird, you can get the trainer out. But there's something that says, I think Terry used the term. It's a term. It's called buttonology, which is you need the muscle memory, right? And like when you see, like for instance, Andre in his personal aircraft flies with a GNS 530, and yeah, he knows, all that kind of stuff. I've only flown with a 530 a couple times. It takes me a few clicks to get through it, even though I fly with a 530 in my simulator. So it's the muscle memory, right? And that's the thing that it's very difficult to get proficient. We talk about it as pilots, talk about currency and proficiency, right? So currency is fairly straightforward, but proficiency is like, can I do this under duress, right? And how often do we do that, right? And that's, I think CAP and just, the way the organization's set up, it's not like we can go just fly training all day, every day. But that said, there is, well, sometimes, there's NISA and there's MOS, the Mission Air Crew School. Those are times where you're going to spend a week doing all of those things. But they have those for ground team. They have them, but it's an ES thing. It's the National Emergency Services Academy. There is a mobile one, but I don't know much about it. Again, staying on the emergency services theme for today. But they hold, I don't know if it's yearly or bi-yearly or semi-yearly. They hold whole week-long trainings. Like, for instance, MO training is supposed to be a week long of flying every day, of learning and flying every day for like 4 or 5 days. That's the way it's supposed to be. We cram it into go study on your own and don't screw up on the plane twice when we have a SRX. And congratulations, you're an MO. that clearly is not the way it works. It should be a little more in depth. And at the MOS school, you learn how to do a search pattern, and you learn how to be a really good MO because you're doing it every single day for 4 or 5 days. So, other comments or questions about the training or future training or request a training? They have Bluetooth. They don't all have connects, which I think is what allows you to upload the flight plan. So you can use the Bluetooth to get the AHRS and position data. So if you're using ForeFlight, like a couple of aircraft that I've flown, that's the first thing I check because they power up. Now, it's tricky because you can only link like 2 devices to it, something like that. So you have to be careful if the pilot is, maybe it's not 2, but I know that it's a limited number of devices. So if both you and the pilot have like extra equipment, like you might end up blocking each other. So that's why I just bring my Sentry. But what I know is when they first power on, you'll be able to discover the connects unit. And usually what happens is when you connect to it, it'll pop up on the PFD. I think it pops up on the PFD, and they just need to accept it if it's a factory default G1000. If it's not factory defaulted, then you may just be allowed to connect without any further prompts. But it gives you AHRS, and it gives you GPS position, but it doesn't give you the ability to interface with MFD for flight planning. For that, Terry used to carry the flight stream. That's what I can't remember connects. It's the flight stream, and it's either the 210 or the 510, but it's a little SD card, and it doles out Wi-Fi, and you connect to that. I think it does connect. I think it does dole out Bluetooth too, but you connect to that as opposed to the G1000 natively, and that allows you to upload and download the flight plan. And that's, to my knowledge, none of our G1000s have it. Some pilots have bought the flight stream and they carry it with them. But because it's not like $300, it's like $1,200 or something like that. It's a cost. But that's my knowledge of it. I've only seen Terry do it once, and then after they started swapping over planes on us, he doesn't really bring it anymore. So
Which flight stream is it? The 210?
it's either the 210 or the 510. I can't remember which because I'm not a Garmin guy. I'm an Avidyne guy, so you know. 1300? Oh yeah, 30. Yeah. See that last time I checked, I think. Say
510's 1500.
yes. Because I've got a really OCD spreadsheet with all the prices of things that I wish I could buy for my plane, and it's, I'm that kind of OCD guy. But yeah, so what he's talking about is, so you know, it does. See, the thing is, no one is shy of working smarter, not harder, right? There are some things we should know how to do natively, and that's the way all training goes. Is yeah, you should know why this works and blah blah blah. But on a real mission or even a SARX, if you know how to use the equipment, use the equipment. So if you know it has Bluetooth, connect to the Bluetooth and get AHRS and know the aircraft's position, whether you're using WingX or whether you're using FlyQ or Garmin or ForeFlight. So I've seen pilots go, "What are you doing?" And I go, "I'm connecting to the G1000," and they're like, "You can do that?" I mean, be that guy. I mean, that person. You know, and just know more about the equipment and just like there was something I was talking about before. Not a lot of pilots. Well, I shouldn't say that. Some of the pilots that I've flown with are not aware of the fact that you can do an offset on the flight plan, which I give them. I always try to give my pilot on the flight plan that we're flying. I give them a 3 nautical mile altitude point to get them in the pattern, right? And this is one of those. It's just one of those things because I do it when I'm flying, and they don't know you can do that. Like a lot of people don't know how to do an offset, course and put a arbitrary waypoint, in your flight plan, and they're always like, oh, that's interesting. So to me, it's just be curious, be willing to help. I mean, because does everybody need that? No. I mean, we all know how to fly the plane, but is it helpful to put a 3 nautical mile point at the correct altitude so they get a top of descent inside the Garmin? Yeah, it's cool, and it helps the pilot because now they can focus on doing some other things, and then they also know that you're looking out, right? So those are like little features. If you're curious about the G1000 and more about it, there's books, there's trainers. I encourage you to just kind of read up on it, so at least you know its capabilities. It's a very powerful system, and it's a good thing that CAP's decided to make the investment in having a lot of G1000 aircraft. But be prepared for non-G1000 aircraft because they do exist. Pilots get super cranky about it for some reason. In fact, the last time I saw a pilot being cranky about the non-G1000 aircraft, it had a G500, the split display, and a GTN 650, which I was like, well, I mean, I fly a 1965 Piper, I basically have like semaphores when I'm communicating. But I was perfectly happy. I was like, oh, 650, boop, boop. And they're like, you know how to use a 650? I'm like, of course I know how to use a 650. And it's just be curious. That's my main kind of input on that. It's just be helpful. But as far as aircrew, I think what this squadron's contribution to Group 3 is churning out good aircrew and good pilots, good aircrew that people want to fly with, no matter which group we are. Because, our neighboring groups, both San Diego and the further up north, I've flown with pilots as far north as, I think I was filling in for, I don't know what the group number is, but they were like Auburn area, like really north, California. And, I wanted to be like a good representative of Group 3. you know, so like they know, because they were down here doing CD work, they didn't have an MO, and I filled in, and yeah, I just fill in, like I do my job, I know how to do it, I know how to do the flight plans, I know how to do wimmers, all that kind of stuff, and the pilot's like, I've never had an MO fill out wimmers for me, and I'm like, well, you do now, so, and fuel the aircraft and wash the windows, and you know, it seems like menial work, but it's all things that pilots normally are into, the mission pilots are usually having to do. And you know, I want them sharp because we're in the plane for 3 hours, and I don't want them tired and you know, getting drowsy. So.
Plus, you're much more likely to get invited back. If you're sitting there like a jug of water, you're probably not going to get.
Yeah. I mean, even if you're learning, you know, just, you know, still be engaged in the stuff that you can do, and you know, make it very clear that like, hey, this is my first mission, or you know, I haven't gotten a lot of time to use the Becker unit, or you know, whatever the case may be. Make sure the mission pilot knows this, so they're not like in a critical moment expecting you to go, oh yeah, raise base and tell them that this is happening. You know, I haven't really used the radio that often. I mean, that's not a good time for the pilot to know that. It's um, but yeah, I mean, any comments, questions? I mean, I've kind of been vamping. No official agenda today. Just I mean, it's like, hey, huh?
Was it tracking?
Yeah. It's I'm still a little, you know. It's been a rough couple weeks. We've got this squadron's been pretty busy. So at least this building and the things going on in it. And, but I don't know. I think we need to do a comm thing for emergency services. Get Chuck up here. But yeah, I mean, we're pretty much at the end of the meeting. Again, I'll do a sweep to make sure. Are there any other anything has come up? Let's see. Safety reminder. Anything from safety?
I talked to Roger. He's planning the next safety meeting, so he's got that.
Ooh, is this the one you're going to? The directs?
Yes.
Is that where they're training their Waldo? Okay, so if you have time, also on the 18th and 19th, this is the directs down in San Diego. So yeah, air crew, Waldo, SUAS, ground team, and any recertifications that are needed. If you have base staff, you know what am I doing that weekend? Because I still need to finish MRO, MSA. Anyways, so sounds like it's going to be a fun weekend. I just wish.
Yeah, find a place. Anybody familiar with hotels near Gillespie?
No.
Decent, not too expensive.
From south, you're going to be in Mission Valley. There's some hotels and there's some other stuff down there. You just have to kind of research it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, maybe a few near Miramar Road, which is to the north, and then up to the next one up would be Rancho Bernardo. And I think there's some that are fairly reasonable down in Mission Valley.
Got a brother-in-law who's a doctor who's got a yacht down in San Diego Harbor. Maybe he'll let me.
I think so, huh? Yeah. Let's see what we got. Ooh, mobile estates. That sounds fun. Yeah, because it is a little bit of a drive, but see, my sister lives down there, so I'm used to going back and forth all the time. And plus, I work in Century City. I am used to like a 3-hour round trip every day, so that's just I guess that's just me. Yeah. Like I said, it's too bad my plane's not up. I wouldn't mind ferrying people down. I mean,
I know. I was hoping it would be good to go. I'm sure I could have found some way to get a hop down there.
Well, there's a few. It looks like there's a few sketchy places down here.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, which one? Oh yeah. So there's the Hampton and the Courtyard. Looks like they're right next to each other.
When we were doing
Yeah.
that Palm Springs Serex
because what's the rock concert or Coachella is going on. So
Oh,
the hotels
or Stagecoach, or yeah.
They were $600 a night.
Yeah.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah, it's nutty.
No.
Well, it looks like there's like a little hotel
I
corridor
peeked around
down
at
there.
some of them, and it was really, you start looking at Yelp and those things, and they're like, that's why I thought if somebody knew.
I used to do Airbnb almost every weekend down there.
Is it?
Yeah, they're pretty good down there.
Mm.
Not too bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
They usually want a couple, 3 nights though for Airbnb. Most of those places.
Yeah, you got some,
As long as it's not like a
Ooh,
holiday weekend or
what is this
some
place?
sort of event going on down
Hey, there you go. You got a crappy Best Western down there for less than 100. Well, it said 80, 81. No, is that 81?
Yeah, except Saturday. It's always more expensive.
Ooh, there you go. Quality Inn. That looks bonus right there. 2.5 stars. Yeah. There you go, man. That's a Roach Motel right there. Speaking of which,
Bring home something
so-
besides sign-off.
so I used to, so I had a job where I was still based out of here, but I was in either Phoenix or the Bay Area every week. So Monday, Ontario out. Wife drops me off at Ontario, picks me up on Ontario Thursday. So I was gone all week for 2 years straight. And I stayed at the same hotels right next to my office in Tempe, Arizona. And it's a Homewood Suites. It's really nice. I mean, it's built for long-term stays. And then the last time, it was like the very last time I stayed there, I'm unpacking the room, and it is roach-tastic. And I was like, I've stayed here for how many times? I've never seen a single roach. And they were just coming out of the woodwork, and I was like, I can't stay here tonight. Like I'm sorry. And they were just like, what's wrong? Because they know me at this point. And I'm like, I took some pictures, and they were like, oh, well, yeah, we didn't know that. And I'm like, come on, they're all over the room. Yeah. So anyways, we're over time. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. For I think Dallas was the only one online, or Dallas was the only one online. Anyone coming on YouTube?
Roger, man.
Okay.